So in this video, we're going to build from scratch a basic asset management system. It's going to utilize everything that we've covered in the previous videos, and it won't be using anything more. So for that reason, everything will seem fairly familiar because we've already touched on it when we were playing around with the module that had the different features, like the rule and the fields. So I'm going to create a new section. And we'll just for neatness, I'm going to delete this one. We don't need it. And I'll delete this one. And we will say my modules. So I'm going to create a new module called asset management with the normal category. I go into that module. I create a section. Doesn't really matter for now. I'll just say the section is blocks. And we're going to say asset list. I forgot to give it a section. I'll just delete that one because there's nothing in it yet. So instead I'll give it the section. And we'll say calibration record. Next up, I'm going to start creating our fields. So the first thing we want to do is create an auto-generate field. So we go here, auto-generate, and we're going to say asset number. And I'm going to pick the text and number increments. And we'll just say AN for asset number. That's the wrong place. That's the text. And we're going to say the length of the digit of the incrementing numbers is 3 and the starting number is 001. I'll just change the name of this field. Next up, I'm going to say description, which is going to be a basic description of the asset. And I'll say date asset added. And that's going to be a date field. So it's date time selector, and we're going to pick just date. The next thing we're going to do is add image. So that's going to be a file field. And we'll say instruction manual. And that's also going to be a file field. So now we have our first block built. I won't change the layout, I'll just keep it at this just for neatness. The second thing I will do now is create our second block, which is our calibration record. Go to edit mode. And I'm going to create a plain data field called asset number. I'm also going to create a plain data field called description. I'll create another plain data field called date asset added. And we'll create a date field date calibrated. So the next thing we need is to create the rule that we showed in the previous videos. So for the asset number, we're going to populate another local field with data from elsewhere. In this case, we're going to the block to look up is asset list. The data required is the description. The local field to populate is description, and the means of the search criteria that we're looking that needs to match is the asset number needs to match the asset number in the other block. And we click submit. I'm going to do that one more time for the date asset added. So the rule is actually still selected there, so I can go back to asset list again. And the data required this time is the description. The local field to populate is the description, so they happen to be the same name, but they don't have to be. And again, the means of which we're searching for it that needs to match is the asset number needs to match the asset number in the other block. So finally, there was one more thing we needed to do before we start adding records, and that was go back to the asset list and create our link data field. I just didn't do that yet when doing this block because we didn't have our field set up in the other block. So we'll just call it calibration. And we'll pick link data field. The block is calibration record. We'll just give it a blue color. We'll say add calibration as the button. And the data we're going to pass over is the asset number. And press submit. Finally, I'm just going to do one more thing. I'm going to go into manage data, our data display settings, as we showed in one of the videos previously, just to show all our video or all our columns. Asset number, description, date, asset add, image, instruction manual, calibration. Press update here. What I'm doing here is I'm saying we want 6 columns to appear because the default is actually 5, but we had 6 fields. So now I'm ready to start adding my assets. So the first asset we're going to add is a light meter. The date we'll say is today. And just for the purpose of the video, I've already have the files downloaded. So the image is going to be the first one we do, light meter, and the instruction manual, light meter, and click submit. So now when I click the image, we can see the light meter appearing, and when we load the instruction manual, it loads as a PDF. Our next asset is going to be our wrist strap tester and our instruction manual, and I'll just call it wrist strap tester. And finally, we will do our safety tester. As you can see, the numbers are incrementing here. You've already added the image. We're going to just add the instructions, press submit. I don't want to add the calibration records here yet while we're creating the asset because I want this data to be available and logged first here. I'm going to do one other thing just to make this a bit nicer. Scroll down to edit mode. And we're going to, in our data display settings, there's an option called show previews of uploaded images. So that's when you're editing the block and you scroll down, you go to data display settings. If you want the images to appear when they are images, this is how you do it. And then we get to see our image, which is a bit nicer. So now let's start adding some calibration records. So for this one, I'll click it straight from the record. And as you can see, it populated this from it being passed over in the URL. You can see the URL here. And this triggered the rule. And that's how it got the description. So it triggered the populate another data. I can see it didn't populate the data the asset added. So I'm just going to check the rule to see if I did something wrong. So asset number. I'm just going to delete this because it looks like I managed to add the rule without selecting the local field. So I'm going to do it again, populate another local field with data from elsewhere. Block to look up is asset list. Data required is the date asset added. Local field to populate is data asset added. And the data we're going to use to match and find what we want to populate is the asset number, and press submit. And now we can see here, field to watch, data asset added, local field to populate, and we're using the asset number, so that should be fine this time. So there's no asset number here because I just loaded the block just on its own. So it's impossible in this particular module to use this block without being linked from an asset. And that's by design. Of course, there's other ways it could be done. So I'll go back to here and I'll go back to the AN001. This time it's working. We're getting our light meter and we're getting our date asset added. And we'll just say date calibrated. We'll just pick another day and press submit. So now we have our record, and that's our date. That's our calibration record for AN001. Let's just do one more. The wrist strap tester. And we just say it was calibrated on 15th. So now we have a calibration record along with our asset list. And that is a nice and simple asset management system. We'll make more improvements to this once we've more fields and rules and parameters explored. We can get very advanced and start setting mail alerts and reminders and all kinds of things. But for now, we'll just get going with this just so we have a basic idea of fields, some parameters and rules. Thank you. Goodbye.